Namaste. Welcome to our Satsang, and we are ready to begin. I've shown you the magic box out of which I will draw the questions. You can go to this address on YouTube, and there you will find the complete the complete answers, complete with hacking like this. All right, fine. Thank you very much for your question. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but our Swami Satyananda and Swami Tarkananda, during their last trip to India, met a very remarkable yogi, a sannyasi, up in the Himalayan foothills. They asked him various questions. And he said to them, "Your questions show that you're nearing the goal." And Buddha also talked about the importance of knowing the right questions to ask. So let's begin with right question number 1. This question explains some experience it had regarding weather and its meditation. It just so the real question is there any correlation between meditation and atmospheric energy? And yes, because especially that which relates to water. And this questioner has mentioned about the heavy rains. Because our body is mostly water. If we took the water away, we would just be kind of a little bit of a blob. Therefore, atmospheric temperature and atmospheric pressure does affect us. There are people whose moods are very much affected by the weather. And again, weather usually that has to do with water, with rain. And that's so. The yogi can change his atmosphere in which he moves simply by his sadhana. And literally, the atmosphere around a yogi will be very marked. In India, when I've encountered great yogis, just coming within even 20 feet or so of them, it's like I went into another world, into another region. With Swami Shivananda and Anandamayi Ma, both, it wasn't just an intense atmosphere that you were aware of, it's you became deeply aware of your own self. This was because they were the people who were truly out of the game. In Ma's case, we may assume that she never was in the game, that she was always a manifestation of that. And I have no interest in trying to define Ma because she couldn't possibly be defined. But we can create our own atmosphere. And by the way, relating to rain, for example, when our ashram was in another town, we decided to consecrate a small room as a temple. And we followed the scriptural directions, especially for pranapratishta, the term we've been hearing about the Ayodhya temple, which means the establishment of life force. And it means in a specific image or depiction. And we had a few of these images in the temple. And the rituals took about 24 hours. I mean, we were greatly helped by a great Shastri from Chicago, and we did everything like this. There was even at one point where we went to sleep all around the deities, you know. Well, when this happened, it began to rain. And it rained for many, many hours. And then from then on, for the next month, the next 30 days, every day it rained, really a good solid rain, for at least a few hours each day. And it broke the rainfall record for the state. But also in the other days after the main one, sometimes we leave to go somewhere and we come out the door and there was a rain, it fell on us. We get in the car, pull out of the driveway, and we were out in the street, there wasn't any rain, and literally the rain was only over our ashram property. That sounds like a fable and a fantasy, but really and truly, that did happen. I told this to Anandamayi Ma the next time I saw her, and she gave an indication that yes, this is the way things go. So it's all up to us. I one time recommended to a friend of mine that I felt was serious about spiritual life, that she should go to see this very advanced yogi that I knew and living in the area where we were. And she did. And then when I saw her the next time, she said, you know, I've had a chronic back pain in the lower back for years. And when I went in the room and waited, and then when the yogi came in, I stood up and I felt as if I was lifted off the ground for about half a foot and then settled back again, and the pain was gone and it's never returned. So the yogi had no intention of healing, but the vibration of the yogi's consciousness extended out. It's estimated that the aura of a great siddha can be 200 feet across. And I do remember well that there was a great yogi named Mahanananda Brahmachari, an incredible person. And I learned that he was going to be at a particular ashram that I didn't much want to visit. And I thought, well, I'd like to see him, but I don't think I will. But I woke up early in the morning and I felt like I was getting the call, like, you come. So then when the time came after 2 or 3 hours, why, I went there, and as soon as I stepped through the gates, I could tell there was this tremendous force just emanating like a nuclear reactor from one of the buildings there. So when I saw one of the people that lived in the ashram, I said, is Mahanananda Brahmachari in that building? He said, yes, that's where he slept. He came here yesterday and he stayed overnight. So I went on in to their satsang hall, and various people came in, sat down, and suddenly I knew he is coming, and I stood up and he came through the door. And it was absolutely astounding. I mean, it was truly astounding. When he spoke very, very quietly. But I felt like infinity was speaking through him. Sri Ramakrishna said it's like a wall that has a small hole in it, and you can see through the other side through the hole. And he said avatars and great beings are like that hole, that a glimpse of the infinite is gained through them. And that was truly so in his case. What will you suggest for purification of mind? First, purification of body. body and the subtle bodies. And you do that mostly through purity of diet, absolute vegetarianism, and even better, absolute veganism. Because that way you have no animal vibration whatsoever in the subtle portions of your body. You see, the food you eat becomes your mind. The Chandogya Upanishad says this. That just as when you churn butter, the butter rises to the top of the milk, so the essence of the food you eat rises up into your mind and becomes your mind. And then it later says that the very liquid you drink becomes the prana of the body, the life force of the body. So you can see how valuable then diet can be for the yogi. And then other things, yama and niyama. This is very important. I've written a small book called Foundations of Yoga. You can find it on our website, and it's actually a chapter in the book Soham Yoga, Yoga of the Self. And that's the fundamental thing. And then, of course, it's the way you deliberately think. Therefore, japa is absolutely important. Meditation is absolutely important. And frankly, the whole way you live your life. Because you see, we're not in compartments. I remember a very outstanding young man said to me one time, one of the worst things that ever happened to human beings was the invention of the pie chart. Because he said the pie chart takes something that's whole and then they divide it into pieces and, oh, this aspect is important or this aspect is less important and so on. And he said people act like they think that's what they are. They're just a bunch of things put together in a bundle. But in reality, they're only one thing. And all these extra things are part of their very existence, and especially a part of their mind and their whole subtle makeup. So it's important for us, really, to understand this. So either you're yogi all the way or you're not a yogi anyway. Yes, extreme. Do you believe in the Vijnana Vedanta concept of Sri Ramakrishna? Well, if I don't answer this as seems sensible to you, perhaps I've not grasped it right. I went through the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and what, in essence, he seemed to say in various places was that jnana causes you to see a very real distinction between things. This is pure, this is impure, this is virtuous, this is not virtuous, this is positive, this is negative. But in Vijnana, you see that it all is the divine itself. But you see, it's all the divine, but the divine is behaving in different ways in different elements. So you don't suddenly say, oh, it's all one, so I can do what I want. I really wanted the slug of whiskey, so let me go get some. One of the big yoga fakes of the yoga boom, what was found, he went to a spiritual center run by some friends of mine, and he stayed there. They came and they found the man taking drugs, hard drugs. And he said, you're supposed to be a yogi, what are you doing? And he said, when you're centered, it doesn't matter. Yes. But if he was in his center, he sure was able to think of a lot of aspects of him that wasn't the center. Yes. All right, fine. I've been inspired by the works of Nisargadatta. In particular, he has the idea that the I am is a kind of error. In your works on Soham, I don't see this notion of I am as error or mistake. Do you see problems with this? Well, this is a problem of when we're reading a translation from an Indian language or from Sanskrit that we don't know what the original word was. Now, let's just take in this quotation, I am is all in capitals. Now, could it possibly thought sensible that a person would be wise if they didn't think they existed? Now, you can think there are aspects of me that are unreal because they're Shakti, they're Prakriti, and they're changing and they're relative. They arise, they subside. But that's not me, you see. The I doesn't arise, doesn't subside, isn't relative. It is transcendent, the true I. So we have the word ahamkar, which means the I thing in the low sense. In other words, the identification with, oh, I'm a patient person, I'm an impatient person, identifying with the mind, identifying with the body. I'm a very sensitive person when they just mean that their senses operate more strongly. This is ahamkar, the I thing, and it's delusive. And when that's all we identify with, we are in big trouble. We are deluded. But there is another sense that the yogis use, asmita, based on asmi. And that I am is divine. It says in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that at first there was nothing but the Param Purusha, the supreme being. And he's first speaking. See, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, which, by the way, is a paraphrase of a Krishna Yajurveda verse. St. John the Apostle didn't come up with it. And he said, Soham asmi. I am Soham, not Soham aham. Asmi. In other words, he realized the spirit part of himself and that it was Soham. So this is a thing. We have to understand the great masters can't explain everything, and also a translator may not give us what the master said. That I've seen in publications in India. So this is important. The I am, and then you put a thing, I am a such a name, oh, I'm a such a nationality, and so on. Look, we couldn't function in the world if we didn't have that, but to think that's the essence and that's the reality of us, that's the problem. That's the error. So we have to understand, aham can be delusive, but asmi is not. Now, let's look at something here about this. This is what Swami Muktananda said about this. He was a disciple of Paramhansa Nityananda, one of the greatest saints of the 20th century, and learned from him, and learned Soham sadhana from him, by the way. All right. For an intelligent, perceptive person, this mantra, Soham, is very effective. The aham, or sense of self, is not the artificial ego. In other words, asmita is not aham. It is a natural, pure self-sense without any false identification. The glory of this mantra is described in a commentary on the Guru Gita. And then he says in another place, instead of repeating I am all the time, in other words, aham, 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 why don't you repeat Soham, Soham, which means I am that. In other words, I am God, I am He. And so in that sense, the Sri Ramana Maharshi said, at the beginning of meditation, it is good to simply say, I. And we all know that Sri Ramana did not mean the ego. So, but let's let Maharaj, this Nisargadatta Maharaj himself, in the subject. These are his words from Master of Self-Realization and Ultimate Understanding, in case you want to see the book. Soham is endless, limitless, measureless, and is the messenger of truth who is self-evident. The message and the messenger are not separate in him. You see, notice Gajanana Maharaj said, Soham is the name of God, actually also, a designation of God. And so Maharaj states this also. This messenger is himself the joy that is the enjoyment of the endless. So I don't have any problem with what Nisargadatta Maharaj said at all, but it has to be understood. You see, the relayers of the message oftentimes don't get it right, either through mistake and often deliberately. One time we got a telephone call. One of the other people of the ashram answered. They said that there was a telegram from one of the monks that at that time was in India. And so he said, but it didn't make any sense. So I called Western Union, staffed by fallible people, of course. So I said, all right, there's this thing. There's this telegram. What does it say? Main Ranchi. I said, what? Main Ranchi. Say that again? Main Ranchi. I said, that doesn't mean anything, and you know it doesn't. Now, what does it really say? And then the person said, Ma in Ranchi. Knew all along what it said. You see? You see? Delusion and Satan is everywhere. Yeah. Especially in our own minds. All right. How does one know when they have impressions and impulses from the source than the mind or ego? Well, that is a right question. That's an intelligent question, and one we should never stop asking our whole life. I've known people, they thought that anything they thought must be from God. I met briefly, fortunately, only briefly, a woman who thought she was a great psychic. And she thought that all her dreams were absolutely real. So one night, her husband was awakened by her beating on him, and I mean violently beating him around the face, screaming, calling him all kinds of names and so on, which I won't repeat to you, and yelling, you're cheating on me, you. He said, what are you talking about? She said, I saw it in my dream. You've got some girlfriend somewhere, blah, 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 blah. What can you do? What can you, there's a song, what shall we do with a drunken sailor? Well, what shall we do with a deluded person who thinks that they are enlightened? So, how do we know? If it matches with good sense. I knew a young woman, very, very intelligent, who one day was found with the upper part of her body in the oven by a person who looked after her. She had some physical illnesses, and someone usually stayed with her. So this friend of mine who looked after her came in and found her in the oven, partway in the oven, as far as she could get. And so he said, you know, what are you doing in the oven? And she said, I'm going to another dimension. So he just pulled her out and said, look, what is this? So she told him that her guides had told her that if she would go and get completely in the oven, that they would take her to other dimensions. She wasn't insane, but she was certainly subject to certain kind of delusions. So, first of all, does good sense supply it? And second, does it keep, is it in keeping with what the teachers of wisdom and truth have told us? You see, though I remember one member of our ashram one time told me very kind of diffidently, but yet very proud, that he'd gotten a revelation. So he said that a voice had spoken to him when he was asleep and told him that I was, I think, a 1/24th incarnation of the god Vishnu. Now you see, Krishna, Rama, and others are considered avatars, incarnations of Vishnu. Now, they also speak about how there's a manifestation of God in all of us. So everything is kind of a partial manifestation of the divine. But it goes way, 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 way down the scale. And if you were a 1/24th incarnation of Vishnu, you wouldn't even be a plant. You'd be some kind of a rock or a mineral. And I explained that to him and told him that I sort of thought we could doubt that that was a revelation of what was real. However, I guess if I was smart, I could say, well, on occasion I've been told I'm an avatar of Vishnu. But I hope you wouldn't believe me. All right. Okay. You recommend Soham as the primary practice in order of importance. What other practices do you recommend? Forget about order of importance. There are things you've got to do all of them. And if you do the most important, but you don't do them all, nothing good is going to come of it. For example, you don't get up and say in the day, well, I must do the most important thing today. Well, what if your work is your most important thing? Aren't you going to take a bath? Aren't you going to eat? Aren't you going to go to where you work? So, foundations of yoga, I've already mentioned. Foundations. There isn't just one foundation. There's many, and you've got to have all of them. And therefore, I suggest you read it because it would be incredibly a long time for me to outline it all. What time of day do you recommend meditation, and for how long? As works for you. Now, there's real meditation, right on track, right on target. That's Soham sadhana. Then there's all other kind of yogas and all kinds of esoteric practices. In the lesser practices, frankly, except for Soham sadhana, in the lesser practices, it matters. In Soham sadhana, it doesn't matter. So whatever is best for you personally, that's when you meditate. There are people who say, well, you're supposed to meditate in the Brahma Muhurta, get up at 3:30 or so in the morning, and so on and so on. Well, you do if you're wandering in samsara and you don't know Soham sadhana. But if you know Soham sadhana, one, you should be doing japa all day long. That's an absolute. And then sitting for meditation, that's as you came and can and is sensible. There are a lot of people that try to get out of work by meditating, you see. Um, I read an account of a man from some small American town, of course, had a Christian background, and across the street from his home, there was a porch, and on the porch, there was a porch swaying, and in the swaying, all day long, would be the man that owned the house, sitting in the swing with a Bible with brilliant gold edging on it, and it would flash in the sun. Because he would be there, he'd sit there, and slowly he'd turn a page, and after a while he'd turn another page. And if his wife would ever call out and say, "Could you come help me with this?" Or could you do this or that, or something like that, he'd say, "Wife, know you not, I must be about my Father's business," which of course the words of Jesus in the Bible. So I assume this man must have thought he was pretty high on the spiritual roost. Uh, but he was wrong. He was obviously a lazy, cunning fool. All right. And for how long? Gajinana Maharaj, and I might as well speak about somebody that knew the whole picture. He said, for some people, 30 minutes was enough. Of course, how many times a day would it be? And he said, certainly 1 hour. And 1 hour was what he really felt was the ideal minimum. Here we meditate 3 to 4 hours. And it wouldn't hurt if we did even more. But we don't use meditation to try to get out of work, which a lot of people do. They sit, they go to sleep. I had a friend that belonged to a yoga group in California, and they had group meditation. And one time he sat next to this man who, of course, his eyes dropped, they went forward. So he slightly pushed him, and he said, "You were asleep." Well, when the meditation was over and they went outside, the band came up to him and said, "Listen, I was in samadhi, and you brought me out of it, and I couldn't go back into samadhi after that." There we are. All right, Shaktipat. Why don't more gurus use it as it has been extremely helpful for many? Are there circumstances where maybe it shouldn't be used? This is not an easy question to answer because there's Shakti and there's Shakti. There's very gross overt Shakti and there's very high Shakti. So high it's virtually consciousness. The fake yogis that have a lot of Shakti, it's just neurological energies mostly. They can like look at you and bang, you fall over. Or they look at you and you go like that. But you're not meditating, you're just knocked out. Or they raise their hand and boom, you're on the floor, or you, I felt it go up my spine, and so on. This is nothing more than low energies of the lower bodies. It has not only does it have no value, it has is detrimental and it's destructive. There was one big Shaktipat guru. He made a big hit. He went around the world, and he'd, be there. Maybe he'd look at them, or maybe just being in his presence, people would get up and start dancing around, and then they start. What is this to do with God? What is this to do with consciousness? Think about it. It's the body, just the body. I knew a poor young girl. She came to me, she cried. She said, I went to this guru's ashram just to get a quiet place. I wanted to meditate. So I just went into a room and left. I never went to where he was. I never went to any of the functions. And she said, one day I got up and started dancing around the room and I couldn't stop it. And I prayed, God, please. And she said, it was like I was a puppet on a string. And she said, now, occasionally it happens. Now, that is destruction of a person's subtle levels. And that's a hellish and evil thing to do. And he was a hellish and evil person. That happens to be the truth. I mean, he had hellish contact, very much. So, this is silly. Let's look at it like a worthy person talked about it. Anandamayi Ma. She said, absolutely, there is Shaktipat. But it's on a high spiritual level where what you receive is more like spiritual opening and a capacity for higher consciousness. And there are, like I said, with Shivananda and Anandamayi Ma, when you came into the presence, you didn't cross your eyes and shake, but suddenly you became deeply, deeply self-aware. Sitting and watching Anandamayi Ma for an hour was fantastically purifying and fantastically beneficial. Once a year, the Anandamayi Ashram sponsored a function called Samyan Sapta, which means 7 days of restraint, discipline. So for 7 days, people came. We meditated in the first thing in the morning, and we meditated in the afternoon. That was a good idea, because in the evening, you're very likely to go to sleep. So we meditated there. Of course, Ma was there. Much of the rest of the time, various sadhus and yogis of high development would give discourses on spiritual subjects, sometimes on a scripture, and sometimes they would answer questions. And there were those of us, the hard cases, who we only looked at Ma when they were talking, and, well, we only looked at Ma when we were supposed to be meditating, because we could meditate at home. We could meditate back in America, for heaven's sakes. So we watched Ma from about 6 o'clock or so in the morning to about 9 o'clock at night. And it was a very, very good idea. I'm telling you, it was a very good idea, because you see, when you look at an external form, you see it, your eyes don't see it. It relays impulses into your brain, and your astral brain takes it in and reworks it and makes it into an image of what it is you're looking at. Therefore, your mind takes on the shape of what you look at. And if what you look at has a vibration, a magnetism, then that fills your mind. For example, these, Ganesha or Rama. There's Shiva. If you look at those images just carefully, your mind starts to vibrate to the vibration of what they represent. Ram is, of course, absolute God, so is Shiva, so is Ganapati. So if you just look at them, your consciousness begins to align with theirs. So if you look at where's my, yeah, all right. I don't know what's right and left with fingers. All right, anyway, you see Ma Anandamayi's picture there. So if you look at that. So through the day, we would look at Ma. And believe me, at the end of the day, we had attained something. We had progressed. So it was wonderful to do it. Do it all day long. There were people who were Mahayogis that would come, sit down in front of Mother and close their eyes. Why'd they come to her? See, the word darshan, it means the effect that the sight of a holy being or a holy depiction has on your mind. So why come halfway around the world to sit and moon and impress people of what a Mahayogi you are? You can do that back in America, but these people would do it. But it also was a way of closing Ma out, you see? I mean, she was pervading pretty much the whole area, but you could keep her out of your mind if you just close your eyes and. So we had a lot of those people that would come and they would do that. Yeah, great yogis. So what you need is consciousness. But let me backtrack. As usual, I've gotten away astray. Ma said getting implies losing. Now that's a fantastically important principle. It's good to never forget it. Getting implies losing. If it comes, it goes. There was a man who was obsessed with the idea of I've got to see Rama. I've got to have a vision of Rama. And he came to Raman Maharshi and he said, can you help me see Rama? Well, Sri Raman, for his case, said yes, all right. And he told him a mantra to say. So the man went away, and after some days, he came back and he was all delighted. And he said, I saw Rama, I saw Sita, I even saw Hanuman. Oh, thank you, Maharaji, thank you. And Sri Ramana said, did they leave? Did they go away after a while? Well, yes, they did that. Sri Ramana said, how can you be satisfied with what can leave you? Why don't you seek what cannot leave you? And that's the self. That's your own self. Well, that's wisdom, isn't it? So, if a person gives you tremendous Shakti, tremendous power, it eventually will fade away. You'll lose it. You see? Therefore, you're building on sand. You are an eternal, unchanging being. Fill your mind with what doesn't change. And that's actually true. So you say, well, you say you looked at Ma. Yes, because Ma was Chinmaya. She didn't have a body. I mean, I have a great yoga siddha say this. He said, if you saw what was really there, it'd kill you because it's the cosmic power and the cosmic consciousness, and your body would just suddenly just dissolve. I knew another yogi who, when he met Ma, as he looked at her, because she appeared to be human, didn't she? Beautiful, but appeared to be human. As he bowed down, he thought, I wonder what you really are. And he said, suddenly I was looking into the heart of an atomic bomb blast. And he said, for a while, I virtually lost consciousness. Then I came back to myself and I stood up and pranam. Then I had the idea. But even there, so what? I've told this story before, but I like it, so I'll tell it again. Uh, if you've read Autobiography of a Yogi or other books, you've heard of Trailanga Swami, perhaps one of the greatest yogis in India's recorded history, and certainly in the 19th century. He lived in Benares. Trailanga Swami had an ashram, and it's still there today. And if you go there, you see kind of a temple shrine. It has a life-size statue of Trailanga Swami on it and other holy depictions. And what you will see actually standing on the floor is about, say, 2 to 3 foot half relief in stone of the goddess Kali. Now, during Trailanga Swami's life, at one point, he was in another room of the ashram talking with one of his disciples. And to the disciples' astonishment, that stone image walked into the room. See? Didn't turn into something that looked like flesh and blood or anything. It was the stone, but the stone was moving. And the stone walked in and then had a conversation with Trailanga Swami, with, of course, the disciples sitting there sort of like, and then Kali turned around and walked back and was this immovable stone again in the temple. And of course, the disciple was just speechless, thoughtless virtually. And Trailanga Swami looked at him and said, "So now what do you have?" The answer was nothing. Just an amazing experience. But you can see lots of amazing experiences. You can just look at nature and be amazed. So the only thing that matters is your consciousness. And a guru cannot change your consciousness and doesn't need to change your consciousness. The position of your consciousness, okay, that could be a different thing. A real holy place, doesn't have to be a person, and a true holy being, when you come in to their presence, your consciousness ascends. And if you will apply yourself, it will stay that way. But the truth is, ultimately, you're the only one who can establish yourself in the highest consciousness. So it is not Shakti you need at all. And there was this one, I mentioned this one, Yogi, corrupt actually, but he could do this. He could make people faint, he could make them scream, he could make them laugh, he could make them cry, and everybody's flocking to him because naturally we all want experience of something beyond our ordinary mundane life. You see? And so he would do that. But nearly every one of his disciples that I've ever met was damaged psychologically. And I don't say that lightly because they were good people. See, I don't mean they were bad people and I didn't like them. No. But something was wrong with them, and many of them could not truly meditate. They'd try to meditate and then start going through gyrations, and they couldn't control it. You see, you have to be in charge of your life and every aspect of your life. Anything that's beyond your control is perilous for you. But they wanted a high. This was the hip era, people taking drugs, and they wanted all that. But it was not good. It was not good. Now, I was in India, and there were 3 people traveling with me. Sorry, I'm thinking because there were actually 5, but 2 weren't here. There were 4 people who traveled with me. And I was in a car wreck, and I was actually in a a medical facility because it had broken both legs. And they heard that this big shot guru, who was famous already even in America, had come to Delhi to a huge thing called the Ram Leela grounds. And they said, well, Swami so-and-so has come, and we'd like to meet him. What do you think of that? I said, well, why not? I mean, if you have an interest, go see him. So they did. And there was a huge crowd there, but they got put on the front row because, you see, Westerners got special treatment because Westerners, one, they meant money, and two, they meant possible travels to their country and get to be big and get to make lots of disciples. So they were on the front, but they were chosen out of even the others. It had only been about 20 minutes, and great guru had seen the white skin, and so someone came up and said, Guruji has asked you to come to his quarters and meditate. So there was some place there, I don't know, it was sort of like a dugout that they have at a football field or something. But anyway, they went in and they sat down in this room and they said, Baba, when Baba's talk is over, he will give you, he'll come here. So they sat there and they meditated and they did japa. And let's say, as they learned it from me, why should I not get in a commercial? Not that I told them the best stuff, but I told them at least what I knew that was legitimate. Great guru came in, great guru sat there and proceeded to look at them, but they kept their eyes closed and they did the japa and he couldn't affect them at all. So finally he indicated they ought to leave. So they left. You see? So he couldn't put the Shakti in them because they were protected by God. So now Ma Anandamayi said there is genuine Shakti, but she met it in the Shakti that takes you beyond Shakti. And she certainly had it, and she certainly, people got it. But it's important to realize when people talk about energy, all the hippies talked about it. Oh, the energy when the Swami so-and-so was there. Oh, energy. Energy, power, it is ultimately of samsara, and it'll go away, and it, in the meantime, can be profoundly delusional, and it can be profoundly damaging to a person. I got an email today, a very hysterical email, from someone who's practicing one of these dangerous methods, who was denouncing me tremendously for saying this, and then proceeded to tell me how enlightened they had become and how at one they were with their divine self. But they sure were able to get mad and ticked off and write to tell me that I was an old doo-doo. So they weren't perfectly satisfied with what had happened to them. Were they? Okay, fine. How do I break from the cycle of self-sabotage? Well, that is a problem all people have. Because we destroy ourselves, we ruin ourselves, because we have all these desires, we have all these impulses, and there we do. We go out. And we are our own enemy. The Gita says so. You're your own enemy, and you're your only enemy and your only friend. See, the will of the person. So You put forth your will to strengthen and uplift you rather than put it forth to degrade you. All right. And japa and meditation are the only ways to really do it so that it will last. See, we can have all kinds of experiences. We can have all kinds of things. We can think the deities in heaven are speaking to us, or we can say, I saw this, I saw that, and on and on and on and on and on. But ultimately, when you're all alone by yourself, what have you got? Or what do you possess of yourself? Or no? In you is the divine light. And I don't mean just some flashing light you see outside. So this is the thing. Sadhana, 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 sadhana. There is no other way. The yogis say it, not just me. There's no other way. We can sometimes meet a holy person who puts us on the right track. But we've got to keep moving on that right track. Otherwise, we might as well have never met them, you see. I mean, after Ma Anandamayi's time of her lifetime, and sometimes even during them, there were people who traveled with Ma. They were with Ma all day long and most of the night. About 20 to 40 people traveled with her constantly. So they did it for weeks and months and years. And, you know, all this, a long time passed. So sometimes I'd be heard, well, so-and-so, whom I either known personally or they do the right. Well, they did this, they did that, or something foolish. And I would say, it's a pity they never met Ma, because they didn't really meet Ma. They never really saw Ma. You see? That's the thing. Because if you don't cultivate seeing the self, if you don't meet the self, even an avatar is no more benefit to you than your barber is, or your hairdresser, if you're not a man. So you are the answer. You're the question, and you're the answer. You're the problem, and you're the solution. A true yogi says this, and doesn't say, but my grace, don't worry, you'll be able to manage. No one who's true says that. There was someone who, of course, messed up, and who then went to a saint and said, oh, please, won't you give me your grace? And the saint said, you've already got my grace. You've already got God's grace. What's lacking is your grace. See, we need to have mercy on ourselves. We need to save ourselves. Save yourself, and you will save thousands. Yogananda used to say that. Saint Sarov, the great Russian Orthodox saint, said, acquire the Holy Spirit of God, and thousands around you will be saved. However, forget the thousands for a moment and just focus on yourself. All right, finally, come to the end. So I won't be running over hardly, am I? All right. Here I have verses about the people that fall and cannot come back. It's from the Bible, the dear old book. The Word of God. If I thought God wrote the Bible, I'd sure have nothing to do with God. A God that say things like, go up and kill them all, kill them, kill their animals, destroy all that they make, and even on some occasions, and destroy the trees where they live. That's in the dear old book. So, yes. So there are things that say there is the unpardonable sin, the sin against the Holy Spirit. It can never be forgiven. And then also, if you've been spiritually somewhere, you've been saved, you've been walking with Jesus, and so on, and then you fall and you become a sinner, and you go back like the dog to its vomit and all this foolishness, then you're damned forever. Well, first of all, why believe such a stupid religion? You know, I mean, I've known people, I used to feel like I surely was retarded because as a yogi, I met people who said, I quit going to church when I was 6 years old, literally. I quit going when I was 8. I quit going when I was 9. I realized it was just all a bunch of foolishness. And I think, oh my God, I went on until I was 20 years old before, and then I had to have lightning strike me before, figuratively speaking, before I got out of it. So the thing is this is something too, I could say. You want to be a yogi, you want to succeed, learn Sanatana Dharma. Yes, abhorrent as the term may be, Hinduism. Yep, be a Hindu. But it's a Sanatana Dharma. Hindu really means someone born in the Indus Valley in Hindustan. But of course, it's come to me, the religion. But there it is. And so I'll make a commercial. We have a book, it's called Sanatana Dharma. It's absolutely brilliant, not written by me, but by a committee of teachers at Banaras Hindu University. And they have done a phenomenal, I'm always amazed when I look into it, because I like to read it every so often, that they just did such a perfect job. So this is the book. Have we got any copy around here?
Uh, yes.
Okay, give me one, I'll show it. Show and tell. You can see the beautiful full color cover. I'm serious. The only rationale for yoga is in Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma is the reason why you become a yogi. Christianity, Islam, all these exoteric involved things. No, we don't have one. All right, sorry. Anyway, it's got a pretty picture of the Sasha-made god on the cover with a bit of the Ganga, the Ganges. So anyway, but I'm serious about this. Those who do not adopt Dharma and live Dharma, they always end up either dropping yoga or just piddling to the end of their life and they die having attained nothing. Oh, a magical Swami just, there we are, gave this to me. There we are. Let's put it in front of my face. Okay, Sanatana Dharma. And there, it tells what you have. Right there, it gives a, right there. What all you get. As I say, it's not mine, though there's a section at the end where I do comment on the Manusmriti, which is a basic manual of Sanatana Dharma. But believe me, if you don't have that frame of reference, you don't have that way of thinking, you've got to have a reason to do it. Yoga takes time. You got to keep at it. Sometimes it's plod, plod, plod. I mean, that's how it is. Sometimes, you feel dull, you feel dim, and the people, I don't feel like meditating. That's the time you most have to meditate. So, you've got to have that, and you've got to understand it. Because, see, it's a truth, and your Atma knows it's a truth. You don't read it and say, well, you'll say, oh, I believe this. Well, this is really true. I mean, when I read the Bhagavad Gita, it was life-changing. But I had a very interesting response. When I read the book, I knew it was from the Mahabharata and so on, the preface said so. But when I read the book, quite seriously, I felt like my own soul was talking to me, not Krishna on the battlefield. I really felt like my own soul is saying, I'm hearing my true self for the first time in my life. Tell me what it is. And the other thing was, I realized I wasn't learning anything. I was remembering it. Part of that would be because of having past lives in India. And I doubt if there are any of you that don't yourself have some past lives in India. But this is, Sanatana Dharma is simply like mathematics. It's the truth. It's the facts. It isn't a belief. And to make it, I sometimes question say Indian philosophy, but it isn't philosophy. It's just the facts of reality. We say, always eat, they have a little thing they saying in Britain, always eat when you're hungry, always eat drink when you're dry, always sleep when you're sleepy, but don't stop breathing or you'll die. Now, that's what Sanatana Dharma is. The way to live, not just the way to think, though that's there too. So please understand, if you want to succeed in yoga, Sanatana Dharma is the only thing that will school you and inspire you to persevere and attain self-realization. That is an absolute fact. And you can say to me, but what about the belief in India that all paths lead to the same goal, etc., etc.? Krishna explains what he means by that. And the Gita is Sanatana Dharma, so read it, get the explanation, and see. But believe me, I've seen it through the years. You see, people say, well, you don't have to become a Hindu. But the only people I knew that persevered became Hindus. And they're the ones that followed all those customs. Oh, no. And they even worshiped those idols. And they did rituals. Oh, no. And you know why people say, oh, no? Because it would change them, and they don't want to change. They plan. They're a sleeping dog that wants to stay a sleeping dog that lies. And they can do it. See, Sanatana Dharma is wonderful. It says that's all right. Wait for 1 billion creation cycles. You'll wake up and you'll go back to God. So we don't have to worry about you. See, God has found you already and you can't be lost. But you can lose your true self in the sense of its awareness. I got up one morning when I was in, I think, the 4th grade. I got dressed and then, where was my shirt? And I looked, I looked in my drawers, I looked in the closet, but I'd taken my shirt off the night before. Where was my shirt? So I went out and I walked in the kitchen where my Aunt Faye was, and I said, Aunt Faye, I can't find my shirt. So she turned around, looked at me, and started laughing, and she said, how about looking there? And I looked down at my shoulder, and I had just obviously very unconsciously put it on, just one arm through the sleeve, and then I don't know what could have distracted me, but I forgot. So there it was. That's why it's written in Buddhist scriptures and Hindu scriptures. Turn around and behold the other shore. See, we have the idea there's the ocean I have to cross. I'm here and way over there it is. But the truth is, if you turn around, been with you all the time. You see? All the time. All the time. You don't need to seek for your nose. You don't need to seek for your ears. You can't get away from them. So, there it is. Tat Twamasi, thou art that, thou art that, thou art that. Let me tell you one more story. Swami Kriyananda, who many of you will know about. Swami Kriyananda lived for some years in India. And of course, he met Ma many times. And Ma was with everybody, and everyone was, Ma saw their unity with her, but there were people that Ma expressed love, affection to. And she was very overt in her love for Kriyanandaji. And of course, he lived in Ranchi, where Yogananda had the school. That was the headquarters if you go to Satsanga. And so he'd been with Ma, and then he went back to Ranchi. The train station is just right in sight, in those days at least, of the Yagoda Satsanga, the Yagoda Ashram gates. It's about half a block away. You can see it from the gate when you go up, or at least in those days. So he got out, got his suitcase, walked over through the gate into the office, and he said, "Oh, you've got a telegram from Anandamayi Ma." So he said, "Really?" And he opened the telegram and it said, "Please come back immediately." So he still had the suitcase, so he picked it up, carried it back down to the train station, got the next train, went to where Ma was, and he thought there must be something really important. So he came there and he pranammed Ma, and got up and said, "Ma, why have you called me?" And Ma said, "I just wanted to see you." He said, "Ma, you're everywhere. You always see me." And she said, "Yes, but you don't really know that." So we need to really know. And I need to really say, Namaste, Namaste, Brahmarpana, Must.